So the next slide, step 3, create a disaster plan. So basically, you have to develop your plan and then put your plan into action, the preparation, and then you go into the recovery after the storm. So this is all like anything else. You got to plan, have the action stays, and then once a storm hits, be able to do what you got to do, either during getting like the evacuation plan or after the storm. Your association or commercial property disaster plan should identify procedures that will reduce loss of life and damage expenses. It should also identify procedures for post-disaster management. So again, you got to come up with the plan. If it's an HOA application or a commercial application, whether you have employees or people, you have to come up with the plan and then be able to put it into motion. It is important to organize a team of individuals who will be able to contribute and participate in planning or implementation of the disaster plan. This team should include a representation of the management company, if applicable, and or at least one member of the board of directors in a residential capacity. So basically the HOA, if it's a condominium, and the management company should get together and talk about the plan. And it goes back to determining the risks, putting together the plan for the risks, whether it's evacuation plan like Travis talked about, securing the building, that kind of thing. The board should also recruit residents or tenants with experience in areas such as medical, police, fire, insurance, legal, electrical, etc. So use your contacts, the people that are in the building, the people that are in your business. Use those contacts, come up with the plan, and you got to apply it. Next page.
Yeah, I think one of the things too, most everybody's probably been in a situation where it's almost like a school fire drill, or you're dealing with, if you're in a multi-use commercial building where you've got multiple businesses, and same for an HOA type high-rise building or multi-unit community, you always designate kind of a disaster location or an evacuation location. I mean, it goes back to kind of elementary school. You've got your leader for the fire drill. So it's kind of the same principles on a larger scale as designate, know who your assets are, know what you have in your community and in your employment or in your businesses, and develop a team leader, someone who is organized for checking the business or checking the residents or checking the floor during an evacuation, somebody who you're supposed to check into after you leave, or get to a shelter, all those kind of things. To go ahead and pre-designate those types of characteristics and pre-designate those types of appointments and contacts, so you're prepared for it.
And Travis, that goes into this right here. How many associations have you and I dealt with that had no idea what to do when a storm was coming or when a storm hit? They told us once we got there, hey, we had no idea what to do. We didn't know where to go, what to do. And the first person that came and knocked on our door, we just listened to. And that's why it's important with this slide right here. It talks about having your plan written and approved in advance. Having that plan developed, like we said earlier, by the HOA members, by the business, whatever, and have it written in plan, and then make sure that it's stored away in an accessible location and it's not going to get damaged by the storm. So it could be, in a secure place. And periodically the plan should be reviewed and rehearsed. So it should be discussed by either the business owners, if you're a business, or the HOA members or hotels, whatever your facility is. You need to go over that plan, like Travis said, like a fire drill, and make sure you guys know the steps, that everybody knows the steps that's going to be involved. Your association or property may explore grant funding opportunities through CERT. And if you don't know about CERT, you can Google that and look that up. It's a program with financing. And we're going to talk about insurance policies later, but know your insurance policy and what you're going to need and the steps when that comes up. So
I want to talk a little bit more about the CERT. For those of you that may not be familiar with it, it's either state run or city run or county run, depending on where you are. And it's usually implemented by first responders. So it's basically a community emergency response training. So most fire departments, military, and police departments implement all of their staff to go through the CERT training. So it basically helps designate on what to do for your community. And people with CERT training are usually tasked with search and rescue just by having the CERT training. So it's usually free, or it's a nominal cost depending on who's offering the training, but it's extremely beneficial to at least have some member of your building maintenance or your building management or your employment or HOA to go through this, because it's a huge asset on what to do in disaster response and how to train for it. So I definitely recommend that somebody be designated to look into that program from your business or residence.
Next slide. Assessing disaster risks, potential disaster risks, and potential impacts. Summarize the past disaster experiences. So think about what's happened in the past to your facility or in the area or even other people and come up with those things. The recovery is very important. Obviously, you have different stages of recovery. Sometimes you have to evacuate, you're not even there, and you have to come back to a whole mess like the picture that's behind this slide. So the biggest thing is to stay calm, and stay calm and follow the plan that you had written out. That's why it's very important to have a pre-plan. Secure the area is the second piece. And again, if you look at behind this slide, how bad that place is, who knows what your facility will look like, whether a hurricane comes through or a tornado. And you got to secure the area for not only safety for yourselves and the people that are there, but also the building. Provide first aid when needed. Follow instructions of local authorities. Obviously, a lot of roads get cut off. A lot of different things happen, and you may not even be able to be at your facility for a few weeks. Briefly assess damage, obtain documentation, and protect property. So the briefly assess damage, obtain documentation is very important, and Travis is going to touch on this in a few more slides, but basically you want to have pre and post pictures. You want to have a lot of documentation of before, what your facility or property looked like before the hurricane and what it looked like exactly afterwards, and how much damage was done. And this will help when you're talking with the insurance company and when the insurance adjusters are looking at what's going on, and basically your property, your list of things that were in the property. Also, some people do videos, they do pictures of their contents within the property. So it's very important to obtain the documentation for that. Next slide. Planning a budget, financial plan. Summarize the budget and finances that will be used to satisfy disaster expenses. Basically, you got a budget, just like you budget for putting a new roof on without a disaster, or you budget for new windows, or you budget for landscaping. You have to put a budget aside for a disaster. I know it's hard to know exactly how much things will cost, but you got to put a budget aside for that. For tarping the building, if your roof gets pulled, some of the shingles get pulled off after a storm, and anything like that, a window blows out, things like that. Funding pre-disaster supplies and equipment. Again, we have a list of that Travis will go over here in a minute of supplies you'll need, and so the funding for that. Insurance deductibles. It's important to know your deductible. What are you going to need if your building does have damage, and the deductible you have to pay to get that work completed. Uninsured losses, debris removal. Obviously, again, you can see behind this picture with all the debris there, that can be very expensive. Demolition and other emergency expenditures.